And we're live. Welcome back to the LOOPCast. Today it is me, Josh, and Erica. And shout out to our international friends. I continue to be surprised by
I'm so excited, guys.
the reach of the podcast.
There's someone from Lithuania.
Shout out
Hi,
Rob P.
Rob from Lithuania. My dad's family. My maiden name is Kunis after Kajūnas, Lithuania. And I'm just so thrilled that you're on here.
Wait, you're Lithuanian?
Yeah, my dad's family.
No way.
Wow.
Well,
Yeah.
Okay, so you technically then, a little bit. Obviously, you're American, but
yeah, I'm technically a little bit Lithuanian. It's in
I
my
had-
blood.
I had a couple guys at Ave Maria come to play basketball from Lithuania, and they were giants. They were like close to 7 feet tall, from what I
Oh my
remember.
gosh.
And maybe that's just because I'm pretty short. I thought they were 7 feet tall, but they were definitely mid sixes, high sixes, and they were beasts. So shout out to those dudes.
My college roommate was Lithuanian.
Okay, we got this little Lithuanian
Marius
podcast now.
Palikas.
And shout out to our domestic friends as well here in the United States. We have quite a bit to talk about. Speaking on the domestic front, though, I would like to start up top with a quick shout out. So we had an email sent to us to Catholic Vote that I'd like to show here. So up top, we thought we would attach some pictures from our postcard writing kickoff party last night in Canton, Michigan. 4 generations, ages 5 months to 93 years, were representative. Prayers, patriotism, food, friendship, and lots of postcards. If you want to use these photos in any way, fine with all of us. Thank you for all you do at Catholic Vote. Pray. This is from, shout out to Laura coming in from Canton, Michigan. And I am going to show the picture up top because it is completely adorable.
That's really
No other
cool.
way of putting it. Let me throw up the screen share here. Come on, gang. Look at this.
Aw. 4 generations. That's crazy.
Shout out to the baby in the kitchen.
The baby in the kitchen, and then the grandma at the table. That's really whole,some.
I hope they put the little baby prints on some of these postcards to go out to voters because that would work on me.
Vote
It's
for the
kind of funny
babies.
that I actually had a conversation with Unfriendly Media yesterday.
Ooh, Josh, out in the wild.
National Catholic reporter. They wanted to know about exactly this. They wanted to know about all these postcard parties we were doing in Michigan, Arizona, Pennsylvania, which is the biggest state right now. I think the swing state. And they're like, what's going on with this? What's going on? I go, you know what? Honestly, hey, I live in Michigan. I get all the phone calls. I get the text messages. I get all the TV ads. I experienced it as a voter. And we just thought, it'd be a lot more interesting to cut through the clutter if you could actually just get a postcard from a fellow Catholic. Hey, I'm Josh from Holy Childhood. And I just thought, you encourage you to vote because it's our obligation to vote. Bishops say we got to vote. Just here's how you can do it. Boom, 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 boom. And nice little information. And they're like,
As they are.
I had to give I just had to give a little back though to the reporter about this because there's a reporter, Brian Fraga. I've known him for many years now. I used to work for our Sunday Visitor, and I joked with him that he crossed over to the dark side, and we had a good laugh about that. And I said, I would love those. I told him, I said, and I'm talking to this reporter, right, with the National Catholic Reporter, and I said, I would love to be a fly on the wall in your editorial room. I mean, think about it. You're the National Catholic Reporter, you're a left-wing newspaper, right? And you told all us conservative Catholics back in 2004, oh, Bush Cheney, they don't care about the Catholic voters. All they care about are the rich, and they're pro-war and tax cuts for the wealthy and cutting entitlements and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, now Dick Cheney's supporting your guy.
I know, right? How about
Dick
that?
Cheney is supporting Kamala Harris.
Well, did you see the latest, Josh?
Yes.
Karl Rove?
Karl Rove.
That was an old video clip from back in February before Kamala was the ticket. It's an old, it got recirculated. It went viral because it was right in the immediate aftermath of how January 6th, the solemn candlelit, every year they do that where they talk about it. I mean, again, January 6th. I mean, and AOC, she just went off on it recently too. Like January 6th. She basically intimated that she was worried about that she would get assaulted and raped, and she wasn't in the Capitol building. She was in a different office building, across the street. I'm not trying to make light of it. I think it was a protest that got out of hand. It was pretty stupid. But the person that got killed was a protester.
Right.
I like to make that point. Again, January 6th, their Super Bowl. But anyway, it was just kind of fun to have a little. have a little fun with this reporter. You're like, I mean,
How did that go?
So,
Yeah.
so I would like to report, happy to report, we got word from our political team. They've sent over 500,000 postcards,
yes,
500,000 to
half a
Catholics
mil.
across the country to swing states, all being hand written notes going into mailboxes of potential voters, potential Catholics. So shout out to the political team. That's really awesome. I've even gotten a few texts from family and friends who were actually a part of this. And it was
Yeah, who
cool.
had
They
parties.
texted,
Yeah.
had parties, texted back to me. So excited to be a part of it. Love seeing on the grassroots level the influence that we can all have as Catholics in America, which is cool.
Yeah.
So go to vote.gov. Make sure you can get, you're registered if you're not registered. Try to get your ballot in early, people. Thank you.
Yes. And we have a couple people joining live for the first time in the YouTube chat. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us. It is a lot of fun. We have a lot to get to today. But if you want to help out the program right now, just hit that like button. Should be right above where you're at in the chat. And subscribe. Helps us out a ton.
Look at this. I mean,
I
this is
know.
It's pretty impressive.
It's so cool.
The reach is getting out there. And I have a couple favorite comments we're going to get to later. But so the headline of today's episode, okay, I'm going to share this tab. So Kamala Harris must be seeing some red flashing light internal polls. And I'm going to get to those polls in a second. But came out strong on X yesterday and all over the place with this blitz for specifically African-American men. And so I'm going to show exactly what she is promising now to these voters that the internals must be showing are not turning out at the same rates that they were for President Biden. So here is this Kamala Harris opportunity agenda for black men. So here are some of the promises up top. Provide 1 million loans that are fully forgivable to up to $20K for black entrepreneurs and others to start businesses. So essentially, not really a loan. This is a grant, right? Because it's just going to be forgiven. So interesting language there. Support education, training, and mentorship programs that lead to good paying jobs for black men, including pathways to become teachers. Protect cryptocurrency investments so black men who make them know their money is safe.
What is that
I
one?
already have to say, what does this even mean?
I was trying to understand that, but
I got to
can't.
lock in. I got to lock in.
Okay.
Launch a national health initiative focused on the illnesses that disproportionately impact black men. And finally, legalize recreational marijuana and create opportunities for black Americans to succeed in this new industry.
Oh my gosh.
So if I have to sum this up, this is, I'm going to give you free money and weed.
Yeah. It's basically like, on the one hand, she has Obama out there beating black men over the head for being sexist because they won't support a woman president. And then on the other hand, she's dangling the
But I'll
carrot.
bribe you.
Here's money. I'll just pay you to vote for me. Yeah, exactly. No. And this isn't even constitutional, right? Am I thinking like 14th Amendment equal protection clause? We're going to give
Civil
money
Rights
to
Act.
black people? Civil Rights Act. This
This
goes
is completely
against,
unconstitutional.
Yeah, this is illegal.
So, I mean, it's patently illegal. I mean, imagining collecting taxes from people of all races and then only giving them to one is immediately going to be shot down. No one's ever going to legislate this.
Wow.
Right.
Unless she packs the Supreme Court, and then she could transform this country into like a Rhodesia or South Africa, where you do have race-based, Marxist policies, and then the country goes down the toilet.
Yeah, and so a lot of people are saying, yeah, this is kind of out there, right? Probably not going to be accomplished, but it seems like a desperation push. I was trying to find the polls that they're probably looking at, sounding the alarm bells, and I have them, Josh. So I'm going to share real quick. And
I know, but just for 2 seconds before the poll, like it probably isn't going to go where it's unconstitutional. They are going to keep pushing this unless we push back, and this will become the standard thing of the Democratic Party across the entire party unless we fully reject it. Like this kind of racial-based stuff, like this. She wanted that for FEMA, right? She wanted FEMA funds to go to black people first. Like, what on earth? I mean, you sound like the segregationists of the 60s. This is absolutely insane.
Yeah. And don't some people refer to this too as the democracy trap as well? Is that whoever just promises the most free stuff rises to the top and then, of course, doesn't deliver on that eventually?
Well, it's one thing that, democracy, it's very common to like sort of bribe voters or whatever, that's one thing. But to touch the dynamite of racial politics and doing so and exacerbate the problems we have in this country, not cool.
Yeah. So I'm going to pull up the poll here. I think they're looking at, this is a New York Times Siena poll. And for the audio listeners, we're looking at 2016 estimates of presidential support among black voters. So you have 92% in 2016, only 7% Republican. That's an 85% margin. or 85% margin. 2020, we have 90% and 9%, so still an 81% margin. You get to 2024, and the projections are a 78% Democratic and 15% Republican. That's a 63% margin. So we're talking about a pretty sizable delta when it comes to black voters coming up in this election. Now,
the vast majority of that would be men,
right?
Black men as opposed to black women.
And you get this breakdown of the black men here. Black voters by gender, you have men 70% Democratic, almost 20% Republican here, as opposed that's a 5% above the full. So this must be what they're seeing and hitting the panic button. Josh, is this really a significant election changing delta, or
it is?
What do you see?
It is. I mean, the thing is, it's why Georgia, I think, is a little bit further out of reach for them than it should be, because there's a significant black population in Atlanta. There's also one in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, obviously, in Detroit, Michigan. So those 3 states should be a little bit more blue, but they're not because of black men. Now, the black men are trending Republican, so that's moving it to the right. But then the white college women are still kind of towards the Kamala. So we're seeing these shifts. The question is which one shifts further, and that'll determine who wins the election. But the shifts are going to continue and to accelerate even after this election. But I would say that's why, Georgia was obviously the ultimate swing state last cycle. I mean, it was decided by, a razor thin margin. I think the death of Laken Riley by an illegal immigrant made it so that people concerned about crime are probably swinging to the right naturally. So that plus the black men makes, I would say, Georgia pretty, if the poll comes down, to the wire on this election, I think Georgia is going to still be a tilt red.
Yeah, and we're seeing the shift in the Hispanic vote as well, right? We're seeing that. And in multiple demographic groups that have traditionally or in the past gone Democrat and been like a shoo-in for the Democrats, we're seeing that it gets chipped away at.
Well, that's exactly why Arizona, if you look at the 7 swing states, Arizona is probably the one that's furthest to the right, and that's because Hispanics are a bigger percentage of that population in Arizona, and they're shifting. And that's exactly why Nevada is considered a very swing state, where it really, the last few cycles, it was pretty, not like a blue state like New York, but it was considered just out of reach. Trump didn't win it in 2016. I mean, so that the Hispanic vote moving to the right has made Nevada now a true toss-up, and has made Arizona go from a toss-up to being lean right. Now, does that mean Kamala can still win it? Of course she could. She could win both of those in the Southwest, but the Hispanic vote is slipping away from her, and it's making it harder for her to win in the Southwest.
Yeah. I mean, another good example of kind of the blitz, she's been doing a lot of media. I saw she was in Detroit. I saw she also stopped at Charlemagne the God show, lowercase g on God. But he's a very popular kind of radio host, has a large black audience, a lot of young black men. And there's a lot of moments in it where maybe she did better or did worse. It's kind of a classic appearance to me. But specifically, she was asked, and they had some call-ins, which I was like, oh, I'm surprised they allowed that. And someone asked about addressing the homelessness crisis in the United States when the current administration seems to overemphasize foreign interests, such as the Israel-Gaza war. And of course, what do? You get a quick deflection, putting back familiar lines like home ownership and small business loans. But of course, not directly addressing, hey, it seems like we're sending a lot of aid overseas and it's not getting back to us, specifically the black community, but just in general, it seems like a potent point she really doesn't have an answer for. And this kind of paired with, I went and listened, based on the recommendation of a few people, including some people that listen to this, the Tucker Carlson interview with Harmeet Dillon, where Harmeet Dillon is a very successful attorney in San Francisco and was there during the kind of meteoric rise of Kamala Harris and the Democrat Party. And a lot of this is kind of making sense why there's a little bit of mistrust with Kamala Harris. Of course, she's a new candidate, but she's really been a shapeshifter her entire career, even starting in the early days. And one of the first things that, just popped off the interview was, apparently, according to Harmeet Dillon, she's pronounced her own name, Kamala, whatever you want to say, 4 different ways.
Yes.
Now,
we have recordings.
I cannot think of, that is like psychotic behavior. That's sociopathic behavior. You have your own name. And this lady's like, yeah, my name's Harmeet. I've never it's an unusual name for white people, I guess, but I've never changed my pronunciation of my own name ever in my entire life. This being paired
unless you're
with
a former Washington Redskins quarterback.
right, and it kind of plays with, I guess, it plays with her growing up in Montreal, being the child of some academics, her mom being Indian, her growing up pretty, not an oppressed lifestyle. Then coming to school, she went to Howard University, and historically black college, and then she moved out to San Francisco. And she was saying even when she was in San Francisco, she said she was for the black community. She was focused on the black community, but didn't live there. Lived in a very nice part of San Francisco. Didn't even really start identifying as black until later in her political career when it was expedient. And then when she was dating Willie Brown, he helped secure her a campaign office in the black part of San Francisco for under market rent because he ran the political machine there. So in terms of actually supporting the black community, she doesn't really have
or even living with it. Yeah.
Or even living or even being
Right.
a part of it, like doesn't have a very strong, and her kind of making up the accents as she goes. I've heard a couple different accents now. It's starting to make sense when you look back into her political history of really just dating powerful people, putting herself in positions where she has leverage, and moving her way up as quickly as possible. She's like the ultimate Marxist candidate, right? No sincere beliefs,
Exactly.
but moving around for power. So
Yeah, she's an empty shell. And I think it shows whenever she gets a difficult question, like on Charlemagne the God, which, I mean, a difficult question, maybe not. But whenever she gets a question that a normal person would be like, I should have some specific policy points and some evidence to put forward as a result, she falls back on this. Well, I grew up middle class, or she ends up just repeating points that don't actually answer the question. And you can say that a lot about a lot of politicians, but I think especially watching her, it's that it has always been about getting to the next thing, getting to the next level of power, getting to the next office, right? And now she's obviously gunning for president, the highest in the land. It has never been about an authentic, I believe this about, this deeply held important thing to this community of people, because she doesn't belong to the very community of people that she wants to be seen as the savior of. So I think it's part of the empty shell persona, and like you said, it's Marxist. It's just getting ahead. Yeah, the Harmeet Dillon was really, really good.
Heads up, Erica, you are on notice. Comment on the last episode. Yikes, that was not a good thing to say. Whitewashing and Indians, especially after mispronouncing Kamala.
Okay,
Kamala.
So Kamala can't pronounce Kamala. So that's just not an argument. Yes, I did say Indians,
Colonial Erica?
Native American, Colonial Erica.
No, let's go.
Yeah, I'm like, bring it. So listen, everyone knows what I mean when I say Indians. It was Native Americans, then it was indigenous peoples. When everyone's head stops spinning around and we decide what we're allowed to say and not to say, African Americans, Black Americans, whatever. When your head stops spinning and the world just says, this is it, I will conform myself to that.
Actually,
nobody agrees on what to call it.
And let me add on to that. Like, can we just be a little, nice about it? Like if I moved to a different country, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. I live currently, what I thought was a predominantly Christian society, Western European roots or whatever. If I moved to Japan and everyone kept pronouncing my name wrong, would I get so angry at them? Like, how don't you know it's Josh? Gosh, it's Josh. Why don't you know that? It's like, maybe take a chill pill, bro. Like they look at the word and they can't say it. I mean,
so if anyone has a lot of money that they want to put to amazing use, can we fund a documentary of Josh Mercer visiting Japan? Yeah. I would love to see Josh just towering above Japanese people, eating weird fishes and being disgusted with it. And please, I would pay for that docuseries. It'd be amazing. We need to someone think of a good name in the chat of that docuseries of Josh Mercer, Viking blood, visiting Japan. It'd be amazing.
I love it.
Not all of them are short like you. Like,
hey, wait a second.
Some are
Wait a
solid.
second.
Wait a minute.
Where's that stray shot come from? And you know what? Someone even brought people internally are talking about this. So the Lions are going to play the Vikings. And we have pretty well-professed allegiances when it comes to this. Someone's like, hey, you should do a bet where Tom has to shave his head if the Lions lose, and Josh would have to shave his beard if the Vikings lose. I'm like, here's the thing. I like the Lions. I love my hair. Direct quote from my uncle Your hair is your livelihood. He's still got a great head of hair. My grandfather has a great head of hair. I don't think I'm willing to shave it. And I don't even think it's even close. Like, Josh is already bald. What's he going to do?
You
Take a
say,
little beard off?
but like,
What?
wait, you're just too pretty, is what you're saying, to take it back. And I'm ugly, and it doesn't matter. I mean, I'd like to say that God made a few perfect heads, the rest he covered with hair.
That's right. My 7-year-old's favorite joke.
Somebody said that and goes, well, then do you have an ugly chin because you have a beard? I don't know. Maybe that could be true.
Oh, man.
Oh, brother. Well, we'll see how Brett Baer pronounces her name.
Yeah.
Well,
She's
Brett
going to the
Baer
Brett Baer show
Kamala
tonight.
Kamala. Yeah. What's
Should be
he gonna
interesting.
say?
And she is in talks with going on Joe Rogan's show.
Oh, I can't.
Which is,
please, yes, bring it.
I
Please
hope she
do
does.
that.
And how great would that be after years of calling him a conspiracy theorist and eating horse dewormer during COVID? Would be awesome. I don't think he'd hold back, because I was even thinking about this. Like, okay, would they be honest interviews? I think we'll see about Brett Baer.
He's gonna. I hope she doesn't do it, because I think he'll be almost too welcoming to her, and it'll be a
Joe Rogan.
Rogan will be welcoming.
No.
Yeah, he's got it, because he doesn't want to like have the Democrats think that I'm just for the right wing or whatever.
Nah, no, I think she's gone so far with it. Yeah, on the detransitioner stuff, he's on fire for that, and I think he would bring it up. I would love to.
I hope so. I
would love to see it.
Someone said the Josh documentary could be called Catholic Curmudgeon in Japan.
Yeah.
A cosign. I think Joe Rogan, the thing with Joe Rogan is she has no leverage. Like, this is clear. If she was winning, she wouldn't be doing this. And I don't think she could get Joe to agree to like pre-scripted questions or terms at all. So I just don't think they're negotiating. I don't think they'll come to terms, because Joe never
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Joe's never given up any creative control over his show. I mean, he started it out of his basement pretty much. And I think the thing is, he would have Trump on and he would agree to those terms, clearly, because he goes anywhere and does everything. She couldn't bring her teleprompter to the show. I don't think he would.
Mark's with me in the chat. That's my worry. He'll be too differential, I hope.
I disagree. I've seen enough Joe Rogan.
What about Brett, though? I want to hear your predictions for Brett.
Yeah, what do you think about Brett?
Yeah. What's that going to be like, Josh?
I think he's going to be tough but not fair, and she'll not do that well.
You said tough but fair or tough but not fair?
I mean, I think Brett Baer will ask some tough questions. I don't think they'll be all softballs. And I think, it's not going to be gotcha questions. It'll just be the kind of questions that he's going to ask questions that anybody should be willing to ask, like Margaret Brennan for CBS. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
My goodness.
Next section here, we have a CBS editing scandal on our hands.
Oh, boy.
Another one.
And I would like to give a shout out to, it was either Mike Johnson or someone on his staff to even think to do this. But to set this up, CBS had Speaker Mike Johnson on Face the Nation. And she asked questions about hot button issues, including the hurricane response and illegal voters. And someone on his staff actually recorded his interview spot from their end fully on their phone. And then, of course, you see what CBS posts. So I'm going to start with the Hurricane Helene response. And we get from Mike Johnson himself there before and after. I mean, this is so smart, but just you'll see when you see the clip. Here we go.
Counting then this 2% you say was distributed.
Yeah, so they've obligated some funds, but they've only distributed 2%. The rescue and recovery effort's still going on, and then we address the rest of it.
So that's a different accounting than this 2% you say was distributed.
Yeah, so they've obligated some funds, but they've only distributed 2%. And when I was there on the ground, and you should go, I mean, bring the cameras and talk to the people there. They'll tell you, don't take politicians' words for this or the administration's word. Talk to the people there on the ground. They had not been provided the resources almost 2 weeks out from the storm that they desperately needed. And when I was there, 13 days post the storm hitting that state, people are still being rescued. They're stuck in the higher elevations in the mountains because the roads are down and all the rest. So they need every available resource and all hands on deck. The rescue and recovery effort still going on, and then we address the rest of it.
So that's a different
unbelievable.
Account.
This drives me insane.
Oh my gosh, so mendacious.
Ruh-roh, Raggy.
So
got him.
Evil.
They made it seem like he was like, yeah, well, they only allocated 2%. Whatever, we'll get to the rest later. And then he gives this actual first-hand account, and he says, don't trust the administration. Don't trust politicians like me. Just go there with your cameras. Go and film these people. They say they can't get this stuff. They're not getting access to it. Absolutely unconscionable behavior by CBS. Margaret Brennan Remember, she had her girl boss moment. We muted the mics. Well, we know you like to do that stuff because you're bringing on guests to your show and you're doing a selective edit, making them sound like a callous SOB, when in fact he was providing you with his firsthand account, and you made a selective edit. You got this. This is not the first time CBS has done this. This is not the first network to do this. They do this all the time.
Yeah,
they do this all the time, and that's why. Thank the good Lord. Yes, that somebody on his staff thought, you know what? I'm going to pull up my iPhone. I'm going to record this because I don't trust these guys. Never trust the media. I always record it.
Well, Josh, that was one clip. The other clip that also came out that I think is worth showing its entirety was about election integrity. So here we go.
You know that it is against the law for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. That's established law.
Of course it is. Of course it is. But here's the problem. There's a number of states that are not requiring proof of citizenship when illegals or non-citizens register to vote. We know that's happening.
But respectfully, Speaker,
everybody should want the law to be followed.
You know that it is against the law for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. That's established law.
Of course it is. But here's the problem. There's a number of states that are not requiring proof of citizenship when illegals or non-citizens register to vote. We know that's happening. Look, Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, I was going to say, he issued an executive order to clean up their voting rolls heading into the election. Less than 30 days out, a couple of days ago, the Biden administration, Department of Justice, Biden-Harris administration, sued the governor in the Commonwealth of Virginia to try to prevent them from cleaning up their voter rolls. See, that kind of thing creates a lot of doubt and concern in the minds of a lot of the American people. Why would they do that? Everybody should want the law to be followed.
Just conveniently cut that out. The DOJ, nothing to see there, folks. We don't even want people to know that that's happening. It's unconscionable.
Now, my first gut reaction would be no Republican should ever go on Maggie Brennan's show anymore. But in fact, no, actually keep going on and keep doing this. Keep recording it.
We got him now.
Expose these bastards.
So I'll be the first to credit Maze Moore on Twitter. I think he actually follows me, but he is the first one to kind of put this out into the ether, saying that with the original 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris, they had an edit where she at best sounded like a word salad about the Middle East situation. And then they actually did the reverse. They edited to make her answer sound better, more concise. Yeah. Not even that. They took her answer from a different question and put it as the answer to the question that was asked before.
Right.
So it was even worse than just making it more concise. It was taking a completely different answer and putting it there. And Maze found it and it's just blown up since. I feel like, to Josh's point, everyone's going to do this. I think it's almost hard to describe how bad and misleading this is, because this is supposed to be a news program. It'd be one thing if Mike Johnson goes on Call Her Daddy and gets a deceptive edit, because she's a podcaster and she's a feminist. What do you expect? But again, I think the U.S. trust in news as an institution is like number 10 on all institutions. I think the top is maybe state and local.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Gallup had that out yesterday.
Gallup poll on this, and of course it is, because you see stuff like this. And Mike Johnson, to his credit, is clearly his demeanor is very calm and his communication style is very cordial. I keep needing to bring this up, and I think Vance brought it up in his New York Times interview. That was a hack job too, and he actually came out looking good. And she brought up the thing about Trump sounding like America's Hitler. You said that. Why'd you say that? Back in the day, I thought that he was extreme, and I thought that if news media was kind of center left, it wasn't really necessary. Mm-hmm. But now that I fully understand what's going on with our media corruption, his response is not angry enough. What they are doing to intentionally change the public's perception on people's answers, on politicians' answers that the public deserves to see, that's evil and wrong. And it's clearly pointing to one side. And these are supposed to be impartial. I was about to say Stephanopoulos. He's a hack. But who's like the original kind of impartial news guy?
Walter Cronkite.
Cronkite, yeah. But it's supposed to be Cronkite, right?
Too, though.
And this is just, if you understand, so Trump walked so that Mike Johnson and J.D. Vance could run, right? Because someone had to call this out. And his greatest contribution in 2016 was pointing out, it's not a fair game. You should stop acting like it's a fair game. Don't play it. Go ahead, Erica. Sorry, I was rambling.
No, I was going to say the thing that concerns me the most about this, though, is that all of this exposure of CBS and its corruption, and it's just a Democratic Party mouthpiece, all of that is occurring basically on Twitter, on X, and much of that thanks to Elon Musk. The people who are watching CBS and getting their information from like NBC, ABC, MSNBC, they don't see these corrections, right? Like,
right.
They never see it. It's just background noise. So, I mean, example, my husband was at a family home, another family's home this past weekend, and MSNBC is just playing in the background. He walks through the dining room, and they have this general on who's like, Trump has promised to bring the full force of the military against United States citizens. And the reporter's just like, yep, that's what's going to happen. And it's just this background noise. These people aren't on Twitter. They're barely even on Facebook or they don't know about the Free Press. They don't know about the Loop. And that's such a huge swath of the American population. Even if they don't trust, even if we know that their trust is low in these institutions, there's still the background noise. There's still the narrative that's playing in the back of their heads. We've got to break through that. And I think a big part of that is Catholics who are aware of what's going on, Americans, not just Catholics, who are aware of what's going on and the need for new independent news sources. They have got to reach out to the people right next to them. And that might mean going to your in-laws. It might mean going to your family and saying, hey, you really should check out this other news source. You really should. We've got to start breaking through that. It's an echo chamber that most voters live in still.
You need a balanced diet. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And maybe that's why I'm continually surprised by some of the adjectives people use to talk about even the conversations between the three of us. I'm refreshed. This isn't being said or talked about. And honestly, I feel like the thing about this podcast is like, this would just be stuff we talk about on a daily basis. We're just recording it. Like, these conversations are the same conversations that we have. And maybe I've just not really convinced myself enough of this, but like the average person, these conversations are not heard by the average person because we're
not enough.
Not enough. Right. And then when people hear about it and we have the links and the examples and everything, we're like, oh my gosh, like how is this so different than what I've been consuming before?
Well, and the reason why this is important is because, of course, the media is not like, justice with the equal scales. They are pushing down on the scales to one side to the benefit of one political party. Obviously, we made the point here with the selective edits by Margaret Brennan, and she was in that VP debate and she was correcting, and fact checking live when she wasn't supposed to do that. And then we had in the previous, debate, David Muir from ABC News, right? And Donald Trump was talking about how violent crime was going up, obviously. And we made the point here on the podcast before because the Biden-Harris administration gave permission for local law enforcement agencies to no longer report violent crime data to the FBI. Right. Therefore, the FBI could say crime is actually down because you're not reporting it. I didn't get mugged because it wasn't reported. Give me a break. And so now the FBI, do you hear about this? They did a selective edit, beep, 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 really quietly changed the numbers. So in fact, the violent crime did go up, right? It just came, it was like a small, no press release, just like, boop, just kind of switched the data out. So I'm calling on Donald Trump. You need to call out David Muir because David Muir fact-checked Trump during that presidential debate. And he said, well, no, sir, that's not true. The FBI said crime's going down. What a joke.
Yeah.
The FBI was cooking the books so that they could say that, so that Kamala Harris could say crime is down, when in fact crime was going up. She's a liar. She had the FBI lie for her. And it's time for ABC News, if they owe anything to their audience, to tell them what actually happened. So
right,
ABC,
but they don't.
Not going to happen.
Josh, you always bring this up. It's like the what is it? The purpose of a system is what it does. It's not
exactly.
So it's clear that they have an agenda that they're going to push, and it's not going to stop. I mean, I had an example of this. I saw
ABC always bullcrap.
I had an example of this. The CNN panel. That our boy Ryan James Gerdusky.
Oh, he was amazing.
This
First
was
off,
incredible. You
shout out to this
show
guy.
This. You I
want to say I've interacted with him a little bit on Twitter. Awesome Catholic guy in the media.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also head of a group called Project 1776. I'm a monthly donor. They're trying to get people to run for school boards all across the country. Anyone listening to this, you should consider this. So
Yeah.
look up Project 1776, become a monthly donor like me. I'm not getting paid to do this. I just believe in this cause a lot. So, and I like Ryan. He's a great guy.
Yeah, Ryan's a stud. So I have an example of him going into the lion's den talking about the Ferguson effect, Ferguson Floyd effect. And I mean, look at the reaction he gets from this panel. Here we go.
Just yesterday, Ryan, about how in the context of riots, he was saying, let's just bring the military into it to deal with American citizens. I mean, that happened yesterday.
Right, but the post-George Floyd riots resulted in an excess of over 15,000 black male deaths in this country. How?
Yeah.
The surge of violent crime, it was like Ferguson, the Ferguson effect and the Floyd effect.
Respectfully, you got to explain to me how George Floyd's death.
Yeah.
Because I need causation here.
Yes,
you really are
what
messing
happens
me up
is
here.
after the Ferguson riot and after the Floyd riot, policemen, in fear of their jobs many times and political coverage, pull back from their jobs, resulting in an increased level of homicide.
I got to stop you there because, hold on.
You can look at the Washington Post.
Ryan, we got to stop you there because you're literally making a connection out of your own conjecture.
No,
you cannot
it's
just
a real
do
thing.
that.
Look up the Ferguson effect. Look up the Floyd effect. It is a real term.
You cannot
It's a real term. I didn't make this up.
Invent a connection between two things
He
just
didn't
because you
invent
want
it.
that connection to be there.
He's going crazy.
Like a name. It's a real thing. You
It
can
doesn't
look
mean
it
it's
up.
right. It could be right.
People make them up all the time because
I mean, they go into total uproar.
Absolutely maddening.
He quickly put this link under there, and if we want to take a look at it,
Yeah.
FBI chief tries to deal with the Ferguson effect. This is in 2015. This
It's
isn't a
on
new
CNN.
term.
CNN covered this.
CNN itself.
Yeah. And he's like, you can look it up. You can. I did a quick Google search to be like, okay, if these guys had just pulled out their phones and done a quick Google search, it's like a thing. The Ferguson effect. This is
Right.
This is what happens.
And to be completely crystal clear, it's the idea that after a racially motivated response to something like this happens, policemen pull out of the communities because they don't want to be accused of more racially motivated violence. So it's the same thing with George Floyd and Ferguson. And of course, what does that lead to? Sadly, when you politically charge things like this, it leads to more people of minorities dying because cops can't go into those communities because they're scared of a BLM type effect. I mean, I even saw this too, and it was all over the place. I'm not going to show the video because quite literally it showed to death. But this woman in Fairfax, and I was talking to some friends who I know in the DC area, and they're like, oh, this was in Reston. This wasn't in the hood or anything like that. This was in a nice area of the DMV.
Suburbs, right.
And so in Fairfax, there was a woman who someone called for a mental health check on her. She was like 33. Sydney Wilson was her name. Pray for the repose of her soul, obviously. Really tragic situation. It seemed like she had some type of a psychotic break. This was at like 10 o'clock. It was in the afternoon or the morning. It wasn't at night. Cop goes and knocks on the door. And she charged out at him with a knife. And he quite literally waited, and you can see in the body cam footage, until he got slashed in the face by this knife before he took the shot to put her down. And of course, quickly, you saw like Georgetown University put out a picture of her with her Georgetown basketball uniform or volleyball uniform on, saying she was so sweet, she was so gentle. And clearly, I mean, she tried to kill a cop. This is the most
You
cut
can
and
watch
dry.
the video.
You can watch the video. It's really gruesome.
Very, really
But
gruesome.
I have to say, too, like on kind of what CNN and a lot of these race hustlers are peddling here is that cop was so terrified to protect his own life or the safety of himself or people around him that he had to wait to get stabbed with a knife to take that shot.
That's actually the tragedy.
Is the real tragedy of a lot of this race hustling and what's going on in CNN. And
It happened about 3 seconds earlier.
A lot of people are trying to say like, okay, BLM. I didn't see any examples of BLM picking up this specific story to try to create like a George Floyd type narrative about it. But I have to say, I am really grateful for a lot of the activists that pushed for dash cams or body cams. And I'm sure it must be kind of frustrating for police to do this. But I think so many examples of it literally probably saved cops' lives, society lives. The fact that they could just put this video out right away, say, hey, here you go. Not racially motivated at all. We're just transparent in the public. So, yeah, just
because
that was
we have a lot of vicious race hustlers in a willing psycho Marxist media.
Yeah, sad, really sad. Pray for the repose of her soul. Like it looked to me, I saw the video. It makes it extra tragic. She had some type of breakdown. This was not a
psychotic breakdown.
I feel for her, but I mean, like, I feel for the cop.
I feel for the cop too, and I think unfortunately, the main.
I'm telling you, no one's getting that close to me and slashing my face. They're going down
for sure. Yeah. I mean, you can't. I don't know how we can even have a proper society if we're scared for our policemen to do their jobs. So anyway, sorry, we got a packed show. Got to keep it moving here. My favorite comment though from the last show. Maybe I make this more of a regular section. On Pride and Prejudice, the Colin Firth version is the best version.
Yes.
The Keira Knightley version is poor, but not the worst. That distinction has to go to the 1940 version with Sir Lawrence Oliver. You will be shouting at your screen by the end with what they did with the plot and Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Thoughts, Erica?
Okay, so I have not seen the 1940 version, so I cannot speak to it. But the 1940s were known for just taking like the title of a classic work of literature and slapping it on a movie that had nothing to do with it. Another one of the worst ever was I think it was 1947, The Little Women with Katharine Hepburn as Jo. It was just the worst. It was not even the book. She was a really good Jo. Katharine Hepburn was a great Jo March, but it was just awful. And like Hollywood in the 1940s, a bunch of commies, and they just didn't care. They were like, I'm just going to take this title of the book and cash in on it and do whatever I want with the plot. So I believe you.
Laurence Olivier, right?
Sir Lawrence Olivier as Mr. Darcy.
Sorry, I have a lot of disdain for the oldest enemy of America, Great Britain, so I refuse to pronounce it properly.
What are you talking about, brother?
Olivier, though.
What do you mean, what am I talking about? He's Oliver to me, baby.
I'm proud of my English roots, and I'm going to boot you if you can't keep this up.
I'm proud of how uncultured I am. Gosh darn it. Short kings.
Okay. Right. Don't appreciate that. I was making reference to Trump going on Bloomberg and destroying this smarmy British dude. Okay?
Oh, that was awesome.
I was going to say.
And it did evoke some really strong American DNA in my soul because there's a couple funny clips from this. I need to get to the one that gets to the core, to the real heart of angry populist Tom. So Trump, for background here, he goes on Bloomberg News, running his basement campaign. He goes on Bloomberg News, does a interview with John Micklethwaite. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
British
British dude.
Very British.
And he's taking tough questions, and he is talking about the economy. Here we go.
Another big subject that you bring up repeatedly, immigration.
Yeah.
I know it's a very emotive issue for you, but just from the point of view of business people here, you look at the full effect of taking a lot of people out of the workforce, removing a lot of people. The Congressional Budget Office is banking on the fact that there'll be $9 trillion added to the GDP of America over the next 10 years by immigrants. You want to stop that process. For all the people who run businesses in the audience, I'm just focusing on the economic thing. Are you prepared to say, look, it's fine to have a slightly smaller economy in exchange for having the immigration controls you want?
Okay, simple answer. I want a lot of people to come into our country, but I want them to come in legally. I don't want to...
Yes.
That means you will have to deport. You know, you are talking about deporting 11 million people. That is a lot of people to take care.
It came out last week that...
So if I could break down the argument here, it's British dude talks to potential American president, says not having a shadow workforce of illegal labor would hurt your GDP. So it's a bad idea to claim your national sovereignty and take back, what was rightfully yours.
Well, actually, I kind of respect it because this is, of course, a business channel. It's Bloomberg. They're for businessmen. They're like, we can make more money if we can have slave labor. Exactly. Like, that's an honest argument. It's why is it that they make these same arguments on The View? Who's going to clean our toilets if we don't have a bunch of illegal immigrants? That's what's like, oh my gosh, do you hear yourself? Like,
right.
Who cares if we decimate the middle class? I need my toilets cleaned by a Mexican who won't be working for nickels. It's like,
and it was Lulu's argument in the New York Times interview with JD Vance. She's like, but who will build our houses? And he's like, well, Americans. She's like, in construction? Like, what?
Don't worry, girl. We won't make you pick up a hammer. My goodness.
Slave economy. Yeah. I mean,
will you take a slightly smaller economy for your national sovereignty? Yes. I'd happily take that trade. Please and thank you. Can we do this tomorrow?
But that doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be that way either. Yes, would it shrink the economy? Maybe. I don't know. We deport a bunch of workers and we have to like rebuild with our own people. But long term, I would rather have an economic vision where long term we are rebuilding the labor force with American citizens who are working for a living wage. Catholic social teaching, anyone? Leo the 13th, right? For a living wage. And we're building a country that is not on the backs of a slave economy.
This dovetails with my Twilight Zone, so I should bring it up right now.
Oh, bring it.
All right, pre-Twilight Zone, because I have to read an amazing email we got.
Because President Bill Clinton, former President Bill Clinton, was campaigning in Georgia for Kamala Harris. And the whole point he talks about immigration is like, because we're not having enough babies. Okay. I mean, you and your wife only had one, so that's true. A lot of baby boomers had one or zero kids. And so we don't have enough kids. That's why he says we need a lot of immigration. You got the clip?
Yeah.
Okay, let's roll it.
Actually, I have two, by the way, but
makes me so mad.
One on the way. Here we go.
You had a case in Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened. But if they're all properly vetted, and that doesn't happen, and America is not having enough babies to keep our populations up. Okay. So we need immigrants that have been vetted to do work. There wouldn't be a problem.
Is this Jimmy Carter?
This is such an astounding clip to me, though. Like, you're trying to help, you're ostensibly trying to help Kamala Harris get elected president. So you go to black voters in Georgia and you talk to them about University of Georgia student Laken Riley being murdered by an illegal immigrant, and you say that wouldn't have happened if we would have had accountability on the border. Wait, what?
That's an argument for Trump.
Blaming the Biden-Harris administration for the death of Laken Riley, which, literally, the Trump campaign took this speech of Clinton and put it on their thing and said, "We endorse this message." It was a campaign ad. Yeah. What is he doing?
Is he colluding with Biden?
You almost wonder if Hillary Clinton doesn't want Kamala Harris to be the first woman elected president.
Spite. That would be amazing if she's just like shadow.
Bill Clinton, kind of an OG misogynist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I am not a fan of Bill Clinton. And yes, to the chat, he looks terrible. He looks like Biden. They're all just so old.
Oh, see, you do conspiracy theories all the time, Tom, right?
Well, you mean truths that are just 6 months behind the curve?
I mean, the real conspiracy theory here would be, how is a man like Bill Clinton, who's slept around so many times, and he's only managed to have one child? I don't.
Okay.
I think
we're getting a little deep somewhere.
I think he's infertile. I don't think Chelsea.
Oh, that's an interesting. Okay,
oh my gosh. Okay.
I'm back in on it. That is an interesting thought. I've never heard that one.
Guys,
I'm telling you,
it's a thought.
Hubble.
I don't think he's infertile. I think they just didn't have a loving marriage. I mean, that was a marriage of convenience.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's move on to something a little more wholesome.
I don't want to talk about Bill Clinton's fertility.
Yeah, let's keep it moving. Back on a wholesome note. So we got an email that immediately I knew I had to read. One of my favorites so far. Hello, LOOPCast. I want to start by saying I'm only 16 and clearly not able to vote. But since my mom introduced me to the LOOPCast 5 months ago, I've started to enjoy politics and find it nice to connect my faith to stuff like politics and sports. I have never been an avid podcast listener, but the dynamic between you, Josh, and Erica is very entertaining. That's one way of saying it. I was wondering if there was any faith-based advice on how to go out in the world and share my opinions, especially on touchy subjects such as politics. I go to a private Catholic high school, and the school does a good job of helping me learn about my faith, but it is not the best when it comes to how to communicate and help others learn about my faith. I was hoping for your opinions on the question. I also have an idea for a fun holiday episode for the podcast. It is kind of like your other drafts y'all have done, but based on holidays. The criteria for the draft is that it has to be something to do with the holidays, and you cannot have more than 2 things connected to a holiday. The draft can include a mix of movies, music, and traditions. Okay. Please consider the idea for a fun holiday episode or something. I wanted to say thank you for your time and work on the podcast. I will continue to pray for y'all and for the upcoming election. God bless. Side note, I may have seen Tom at the Eucharistic Congress, but was too scared to go up and say hi. Thanks, Evan. Evan,
Aww.
if you ever see me in the future, I'm not that scary. Anyone that sees me, I would love to talk to you guys. Love to say hi to any Loopcasters. I was
You're
at the
probably
Eucharistic
taller
Congress.
than him. Yeah.
We'll see. He might be a tall king. Yeah, if you see me amidst the crowd, which is probably rare, but if you see me, come say hi. But yeah, guys, thoughts on the question? Well, I think it's a great draft idea first up. But,
oh yeah, totally.
Thoughts on his specific question about communicating and sharing his thoughts on faith and politics as a young man?
Well, I guess my first thing would be, if you're 16, thoughts on sharing your faith and sharing politics. I mean, first of all, just shout out to having that desire, right? Having that desire to go out and do that. The first thing I would say is bring it to prayer. And I know that in my life, when I've been frustrated and been like, I feel like I'm not being out there, I'm not evangelizing, I'm not sharing or being public about this, ask God to show you opportunities, right? And I don't just mean that as like a pious like gesture to God, but I would say like pray that there will be opportunities and people will approach you with questions and with comments that you are inspired and that you have the spirit of wisdom and prudence to respond to in the moment. And God will start to bring those into your life. So I think like doing things like reading the Loop and being prepared for those topics to come up in your life, and then praying for opportunities to practice it is definitely the first step. And then just listening for those opportunities. Like, don't just go into a social situation and be like, hey guys, I want to sit down and talk about politics in the cafeteria. Like, that's kind of awkward, but pray that they come to you. That's the best way to start. And Josh, you probably have
that was perfect.
Here's what Josh on this. What was a young Josh, angry Josh, atheist, libertarian Josh like when it came to it?
Fairly obnoxious.
Yeah. That has nothing to do with being I think it's just 16 in general. Like, yeah. I remember having arguments when I was actually with my now husband. We would argue. He was the atheist, kind of like school Stephen Hawking guy.
Wait, your husband was an atheist?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Is raised Episcopalian, but like had no faith by the time we were in high school. And I, meanwhile, was like new Catholic, newly minted convert. I'm ready to argue. So we would argue about this stuff. It was great practice.
Interesting.
Might meet your future spouse that way. He converted. My husband converted, obviously.
Possible.
But, yeah.
Josh, anything to say? I got a few words.
Well, I mean, again, it's good to have that kind of enthusiasm and excitement to talk about politics. And, I would, again, whether it becomes a career or whether it's just something that you do as a hobby or a vocation, I would say just keep up with it. I mean, we need more people involved in politics. We need more young people. We need people to start new organizations. I think, the future is bright, and I'm very encouraged by what I've said this to other people. It's like, you don't have to try to, it's not like the snake eating the pig. You don't have to eat it all in one gulp here. Just start working, start doing something, get that hustle, get out there and
get it done.
Yeah. I think maybe one of the biggest things when it comes to this is, man, I'm trying to think about myself when I was 16, probably not nearly as advanced as this young man, but it's intimidating. I think it was intimidating for me, at least, because I didn't want to be wrong. And the social fear, I guess, or self-censorship of not wanting to be wrong maybe kept me from doing a lot of this. But as a Catholic, I think one of the easiest things you can do is just stay close to the sacraments, really strive to live a good life. And I think the fruits of that come a lot of joy. And I think that's very obvious and noticeable to people that subscribe to a culture that the fruits of that culture are not joy and happiness. And so all the experiences in my life where I've kind of been able to really speak authentically with people on this is when they've kind of noticed that I may have possessed something that they wanted. And so you get a good faith encounter. And then also a lot of times, so if you're just in good intellectual environments like school, then you can have conversations. And usually when people come in hot, it's like sometimes tough to read in people. But if you talk to them and you give good examples and arguments and you have sources and things like that, a lot of times you end up kind of having a good, productive conversation. Not all the times. I can think of plenty of examples, especially in high school and college, where people came in hot, angry, and weren't open to that. But I think one of the coolest things is, especially in college, when hopefully you go to college or you surround yourself with people that you admire intellectually, is you get to learn a lot from them, and then you are in an environment where you can ask honest questions without the fear of kind of being dunked on. And then you get to learn, you get to kind of evolve your opinions and thoughts over that period of time. I think it's okay. It's okay to hear good arguments, to change your position, to continue to refine. You don't always have to be correct about everything. And if you approach it in a respectful manner, I think there's a lot to be gained there.
I mean, especially if you think that the richness of the Catholic faith and also the pinnacles of Western civilization are a great inheritance, and there's something that you feel rewarded that you get to be a custodian of, and that you get to be an ambassador of, and it's not about just you then. And so you can share with them, like, I feel like this is a better way to a life of prosperity, of joy, of happiness, of fulfillment, whatever, not always happiness, but joy. And I always feel like if you remember that the Holy Spirit is the author of all conversions, then you don't have to feel like it's on you to change them.
100%.
Like you make the case, you try to be a good, faithful witness in your life and how you live your life, and you try to recommend, hey, I think this is a better solution for our country and also for you. And, but you don't like try to beat them over the head. It's like, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Every time I think I've said something that someone was like, oh, wow, that's a really interesting, good point. I always feel as though the Holy Spirit kind of gave me the language to use, especially when I was really nervous about going to talk to someone. And then I do it. I really do credit a lot of that to the Holy Spirit. If you do pray honestly and earnestly for that, I do believe it will be given to you. And then, of course, Erica, you're of course great on this. Read good books, consume good information, good literature, things that inspire you, things that make you feel grounded and smarter. And like, I can think of so many people that converted to Catholicism or at least changed their perspective on something through people like C.S. Lewis or G.K. Chesterton. Like, there's a reason they keep being brought up, because they speak in a way that is so concise and inspiring. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, Evan being 16, he's probably looking at, college maybe in a couple of years, and I would just encourage you to seek out schools. So like 16 to 22 is a really pivotal time. It's not necessarily the time when you're going to go out and make as much of a difference, although you can, but it's a time of formation for you. And so like seek out those schools in the Newman Guide, seek out schools that have a program in politics that's really going to form you. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Hillsdale College. If you really love the books, Franciscan University starting a program in DC, or even somewhere like a great books program like Thomas Aquinas College, they're going to give you the tools and the formation that you need in order to become the person that you want to be, that kind of person that you want to be like. So
and
totally.
Christendom is also
right there near DC and Northern Virginia.
Books. Yeah, they're not too far from.
How can
a lot of great options.
How can we forget about the Notre Dame of the South?
And the Notre Dame of the South. That would be Ave.
Well, and
down there.
Actually, a shout out to your alma mater, Erica, because the University of America.
Catholic University.
It's not a home run 100% in every way. There are good professors there. There are good people there.
Right.
And
School of Philosophy. If you're going to major in philosophy, Catholic U is a great option.
Yeah. Hey, a couple people from the Bush School of Business have reached out and said that they either went there or we had someone, professor
there.
So, hey, shout out to them. And it's not just because they said they'd send us merch, but
that does help.
I would love to visit. All right, cool. Shout out to this young man, though. Thanks for the email.
That was awesome.
I really, really appreciate the honesty and candor. So, Josh, you already hit yours. Did you?
I do want to add a little extra thing, though.
Yeah.
So, we've talked about how Donald Trump has mentioned, the Blessed Virgin Mary's birthday. And then he also did... why am I forgetting the other thing that he did on the internet?
St. Michael prayer.
Yeah.
Michael, yeah.
So then here we go. Today, was it today he posted this or yesterday? Anyway, he's recognizing the 40th anniversary of the martyrdom of Father Jerzy, the great Catholic priest. The source of, he goes, was the source of tremendous spiritual strength for the Polish Solidarity movement and indeed the entire nation of Poland in the 1980s. Yesterday in Chicago, I was honored to sign a commemoration about the solemn anniversary and to present it to Father Jerzy's nephew, as well as receive from him a book of Father Jerzy's sermons and other beautiful mementos to remember the life of this extraordinary man of heroic virtue.
Oh, that is so cool. I'm a huge fan of Father Jerzy, and
that's not going to win him. That's not going to win him any votes in Chicago because Illinois is crazy. But there's a lot of Polish people in Michigan. There's a lot of Catholics and Polish people in Pennsylvania too. That's a wise move, in addition to being just a good thing that he's recognizing this.
Never met a Polak I haven't liked.
I was talking to Ray Flynn. He was the Irish mayor of Boston in the 1980s, and I asked him, "Okay, so tell me, you're the mayor of Boston. What are the different? You got, the Italians, you got the Irish, Germans. What kind of Catholics were the best, amongst the men?" And he goes, "Unquestionably the Polish.
The Poles,
100%. They're always the most faithful."
Yeah, when I tell people I'm Lithuanian, I just say, yeah, the Lithuanians are just the wannabe Poles.
Let's see if I have a good. So one of my favorite churches of all time, Sweetest Heart of Mary in Detroit, and I actually think someone listens from there, which is cool. But I'm trying to get a good picture up here. It is the most stunning cathedral I've ever been in, and I don't know if this is standard for all Polish churches, but they kind of have a cool like pink hue to the inside of it. And just a stunning, like if anyone is in the Detroit area, you have to stop there. I mean, it's a total architectural marvel, capsule into town, in time, but just a real testament. I haven't been to that
one. I've been to the St. Joseph one, which is beautiful too, but I got to check it out.
Dude, Sweetest Heart of Mary.
Polish churches are awesome. They're unbelievable. Yeah.
So, Erica.
Oh boy. So my Twilight Zone. Yes. So it turns out that Kamala Harris, I'm just going to read the headline because it's just unbelievable. Transgender yacht killer.
What?
Yeah, the transgender yacht killer who is now thanks to the policies of the Kamala Harris administration when she was the AG, he's serving a life sentence for murdering 2 people on their yacht. He is getting taxpayer funded sex change surgery in California thanks to Kamala Harris. I know this is unbelievable, but it's true. So this is a man named Jacobson. He says, quote, "I wanted the surgery and I knew I 100% wanted the surgery," he told ABC News. Last year, Jacobson's dreams came true when California taxpayers footed the bill for his gender transition surgery, which included a mastectomy and some other bottom surgeries, which we won't go into detail.
Please don't.
A move made possible thanks to policies and precedents set during Harris's time as the Attorney General of the state. He said, quote, "I did receive gender-affirming surgery and breast augmentation on April 5th, 2023. Jacobson, who now goes by Skylar DeLeon, wrote in a letter to the Washington Free Beacon. Okay, so that alone is Twilight Zone-y enough.
Yep.
But it turns out he wasn't the only one to benefit from Harris's AG policies. There was another inmate, Rodney Quine, who was serving a life sentence for murder. He filed for similar sex change surgeries, and he also had his attorney's fees covered by the state of California, and she went right along with it. California, let's see, there was another one, a man named Jeffrey Norsworthy. Kamala actually fought the sex change surgery for Norsworthy. She lost and later on apologized for resisting his requests. She said she talked about Norsworthy and the Quine cases during her first presidential bid in 2019, and she apologized for her initial opposition to Norsworthy's lawsuit against the state of California, telling reporters that she took full responsibility for those legal briefs her office had originally filed and regretted that she stood in the way of his lifelong dream of undergoing gender transition surgery.
So let me get this straight. Donald Trump doubled the per-child tax credit, and Kamala Harris is using taxpayer money to pay for killers to get bottom and top surgeries to become a different gender.
While they serve out their life sentences. Yeah.
You've seen the Trump ads, right?
Okay. Oh, yes. I'm in Michigan, man. I'm seeing these ads all the time.
Right. And, we mentioned Charlemagne the God earlier because Kamala went on his show. He actually had a hilarious clip where he was like, I was just watching a football game and all of a sudden this ad comes on from Trump and it says, we're paying for transition surgeries for these guys. And he's like, I had to stop right there. And he and all the guys on the show said, I'm not paying for that. That's crazy.
Because
this
it's outrageous.
Crazy. Because it is outrageous. Anyone in their right mind seeing this record would be like, this woman should not have her finger on the red button of nuclear wars.
That's why Trump says Kamala is for they, them. Trump is for you.
Which is a bar and a half. You know what's interesting though? So this guy, murdered 2 people on a yacht, is going to be in prison for life. I haven't seen a whole lot of Catholic solidarity people talk about the problems of giving that person transgender surgery. I've heard it more about the death penalty.
Yeah. No, we do.
We don't get an uproar for,
Well, and in fact, the National Catholic Reporter and Outreach Ministries, they're more upset with us for noticing things like this happening because us reporting on this, right? If Catholic Vote reports on things like killers getting transgender surgery at taxpayer funding, that's on us for spreading hate and for bringing.
That's what they call malinformation. Did you hear about this?
Oh, malinformation?
Dude, malinformation's the new
What's that?
Misinformation. So it's not, so malinformation is different than the previous iteration, misinformation.
Okay.
Misinformation is lying through either not adding context or being like slightly untrue. Malinformation is information that is true, but it goes against the goals of an organization, including our own government. They had RFK Jr. in for a committee hearing on misinformation and censorship and things like that. And they kept saying it over again. You're talking about malinformation. You're spreading malinformation. That actually, under the Hillary Clinton thing, Kamala Harris, Biden-Harris administration are actually planning on implementing that by doing things like shutting down X and putting new burdens on what they call malinformation, which is just
ending
true
the First
information.
Amendment.
Right, which is by taking away the first information.
But
malinformation.
They just don't want you to do it, right?
You book malinformation, you are going to be hearing that.
Word of the year.
100 times more rate before I'm saying this right now. Book it. So
I'm writing it down.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for telling me. Maybe, yeah. Oh, little flex for Catholic Vote, though. The Human Rights Campaign just called us out for reporting on child transition surgery, medical experiments on. They did. They called us out. We were criticized by the Human Rights Campaign, which is a major win, major W. They're like, how dare you spread this information that children are being transitioned? It was reported in Outreach, Father James Martin's gig.
That is a total feather in our cap.
It is.
I think there's few organizations as evil as the Human Rights
Campaign. Maybe we'll get on their hate map soon. That'd be cool.
That'd be kind of sick.
Again, we want these people. These people are full of hatred and evilness, and if they consider us the enemy, then that means we're on the side of angels.
That's right.
Word. Conservatives pounce. All right. I didn't even get into the whole Kamala plagiarism scandal.
Into the plagiarism. Maybe that's Friday.
Yeah,
we'll
man. You know what? It's 2 seconds. It's not. She didn't even actually do the plagiarism. It's her ghostwriter who did it. Which is kind of a hilarious. Why don't we just say what it is? You know?
Yeah. So basically, Kamala Harris credibly found of. Actually, that's Twilight Zone enough. I'll do that one quick because I have a couple other ones. So the headline was great. This is Twilight Zone enough. Conservative activist seizes on passages from Harris' book. A report by Christopher Rufo says the Democratic presidential nominee copied 5 short passages from her 2009 book on crime. A plagiarism expert said the lapses were not serious. Which this sentence says it all, right? You go get an expert, admits that it happened, but then said it's not that serious.
Well, but did you see the story? The plagiarism expert who they got, he came out like that afternoon that the story broke on Twitter. And he said, I did not understand. The New York Times called me up. They showed me one of these passages and just said, hey, is this a big deal? And I said, I just kind of glanced at it and I'm like, no, it's not a big deal. They did not inform him what the story was on. They didn't show him all 5 passages. He came out and was like, I will be responding to this as soon as I have time. But I was not, he distanced himself from this immediately.
Erica, are you saying, is it possible that he also was one of the 200 national security experts that verified the Russia thing? How does one become a plagiarism expert? Do you just plagiarize a lot?
You become very well practiced in it. No, I think you write a couple of articles about it, maybe.
Christopher Rufo is a plagiarism expert. He's caught several of these people. So
done this many times.
But Josh did bring up maybe the funniest part about this. And someone did go and find when Melania lifted something from Michelle, they went crazy on it. They were like, I almost have to, sorry, this is getting away from where I wanted to go, but.
Trump's joke at the Al Smith dinner 4 years ago about that was so priceless. Oh my goodness.
It's Melania Trump's apparent plagiarism caps difficult start to GOP convention. And the Melania Trump and the culture of cheating in Eastern European schools. Wow. But I mean, obviously the funniest thing about all this, it was clearly written by a ghostwriter. There's no way Kamala Harris had enough original thought. You can't use a teleprompter to write a book. So clearly it was a ghostwriter who did this, which is kind of hilarious because now she has to act like she was the one that wrote it. Anyway, I got different stuff I want to talk about. So Trump went on a popular show with men in my demographic called Bussin' with the Boys. It has Taylor Lewan and Will Compton. See, this is why I want to talk about it. Very funny, two very funny guys. Taylor Lewan actually kind of a villain. He played at University of Michigan, and my mom went to Michigan State, so I grew up not liking him very much. But he's a funny guy, both him and Will. And so Kamala HQ, man, what a case study in bad clipping. But they keep like deceptively clipping things from Trump appearances and then saying that he's whatever. So I watched the interview. It was very funny. They talked football, which I thought was funny. It's an interesting side to him. So here's the clip that they clipped.
And I played football too. I didn't particularly like it.
What position were you?
No, I didn't like it. I played tight end.
Yeah. Can block,
and
can catch the whole thing.
You had some hands?
We got Delaney Walker behind.
I could catch the ball good, but I didn't particularly like having some guy that was lifting weights all day long and came from a bad neighborhood.
Yeah.
And he sees me and they were tackling hard. And I played football too.
I mean,
that's hilarious.
Pretty objectively.
It's honest.
Yeah,
I wouldn't like it either.
And of course, what's the implication? So you get the first comment. The racist dog whistle is now a bullhorn.
Wait,
implying that he was talking about black people.
Oh my gosh.
That's hilarious because he probably wasn't playing with any black people back then, right? I mean,
right.
That's the whole. You would think that would be their play with it, but
right. And guess what? I don't want to get hit by people from bad neighborhoods that are listening to this all day. I relate to Trump on this one. I didn't play football. I can't claim that. So the Twilight Zone about this is, guess what? The Washington Post reaches out to Bussin' with the Boys because we've now reached mainstream levels of media, which first off, hilarious. Like I know this podcast, like they joke around. This is like basically a comedy football podcast, and the bigwigs over at Wall Street Journal felt like they needed to kind of insert themselves. So you have to get a response video from Will Compton, one of the hosts, and he's saying the Wall Street Journal reached out to us and they were like,
Washington Post.
Sorry, Washington Post. It was either
not to be
Washington
confused.
Not
Democracy
to be confused.
dies in darkness.
And they said, would you like to comment on, I think they asked it was, what exactly did you find funny about Trump's comment? And then said the quote, getting hit from people from a bad neighborhood who lifted weights all day. And he, of course, is like, I know what they're implying and what they're trying to get here and where they're trying to go. So here's my response. And then he literally farts into his phone camera.
Okay.
We got Josh. This is the hardest I've ever got Josh to laugh.
Josh is weeping.
I've worked here for 4 years.
He is. He's crying. Josh.
That guy's my new hero. I got a new podcast I got to put on my rotation here.
Bussin' with the Boys.
Gosh, that's what they deserve. That is priceless.
Dude, new tactic for you to use.
Exactly.
When you get bad media requests.
I tell you.
Yeah,
National Catholic Reporter won't know what hit him.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, but I appreciate it because I think a lot of times we have this thing like, okay, we need to come back with this nuanced explanation how we didn't mean like guys from the hood and the blah 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 blah. This nuanced like defense of Trump and what he said. Well, no, we don't have to all the time. Yeah. Sometimes you can just make a gesture.
Actually, that's the thing.
That's really what's going on.
I talk to people, especially people who are going to really love the fact that Trump honored Father Jersey. You talk to some of these people who come from Eastern European countries that suffered under communism, and they're like, you got to mock these people. You need to make fun of them. You need to be the joker because we need to return to true common sense, but we can't get there by playing nice and doing patty cake when they're doing these kind of deceptive edits on media. You got to go after them
100%.
and make fun of them, mock them. They deserve every bit of scorn.
So, hey,
so awesome.
New method to respond to reporters. If anyone wants it, Will Compton has revolutionized the concept. So,
That's
another fun episode. I'm happy to announce, Josh, you'll be taking a little break on Friday. Tinfoil Tom is coming back.
Woo!
Triumphant return of Tinfoil Tom. It's been a little while. I'm excited to have him on the program. If you guys have more questions, you can send them to me. If you want to help out the show, though, subscribe, like. It's super easy, painless, really helps us out a ton. Leave a review. We haven't gotten a review on Apple Podcasts in a while. I'm not sure why, but leave us 5 stars, leave us a review.
It's Apple Scrapple.
It's a Spotify. Spotify numbers have been up, though. Shout out to all the Spotify homies. And if you want to email me, loopcast@catholicvote.org. Join the Champions Club. It's truly the best way to support us. Pray for us. St. Thomas More, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and St. Fidelis.